Rebecca Reed from Line Upon Line Learning, and I am here to share a great book list about the coral reef. Now, many of the books that I'm going to talk about are nonfiction books, but a lot of them have a conversational tone that would appeal to children during a group read aloud. That's my goal in making this list, is to find some great read alouds about the coral reef. First, I'm going to start with three favorites. We have The Coral Kingdom by Laura Knowles, illustrated by Jenny Weber. With a focus on the Great Barrier Reef, Knowles captures the basics of the coral reef, and Weber's illustrations capture the beauty of the coral reef ecosystem. Rhyming couplets on each page help make the text ideal for a read-aloud. The gentle watercolors show great details to discuss and observe, such as the animals camouflaged in the sea anemones. The book ends with a warning that we need to save the coral reef. No informational text is provided on each page, so there's no distraction from the gorgeous illustrations. And yet the rich text introduces advanced vocabulary that is not dumbed down for a reader. End matter discusses what we can do for the coral reef. This is my top highly recommended read aloud for you. Life in a Coral Reef by Wendy Pfeffer, illustrated by Steve Jenkins. This is a Let's Read and Find Out Stage 2 book. Jenkins' colorful, textured collage illustrations wonderfully match the child-friendly text. The text is written in present tense, which helps the reader feel present in the setting, among the tentacles of the sea anemone with the clownfish, or camouflaging ourselves along with the crab. Coral reproduction is touched upon, and dangers to the coral reef are mentioned, but only in the end matter. I highly recommend this book for especially younger students. Coral Reefs by Gail Gibbons. Much like the Pfeffer text, Gibbons provides an easily approachable text in present tense to bring you into the coral reef, with the coral slowly growing. In addition to the text similar to Pfeffer's, it also has vocabulary glosses on each page, detailed image captions and labels, and more details in general in both the text and the illustrations. It focuses on coral before it discusses the animals and dangers facing the coral reef. I highly recommend this as a read aloud for older students. More books about a coral reef. Coral Reefs by Jason Chin. Chin's illustrations create an imaginative story of a girl reading this very same book and being swept away in an actual coral reef ecosystem. I love the creative illustrations and the details shown in the text. Personally, I found the informational text to be rather dull compared to the other picture books I've looked at, and yet the imaginative story in Chin's book would be great for encouraging students to recall the facts that they've learned and to notice the animals and situations in the illustrations. The end matter shows a cross-section of a coral and discusses how we protect the coral reefs. Coral Reefs, Colorful Underwater Habitats by Laura Purdy Salas, illustrated by Jeff Yesh. Yesh's simple two-dimensional illustrations and Salas's text provide an approachable nonfiction book for a young reader. Each two-page spread begins with a heading such as Where are Coral Reefs? How coral reefs form, and Animals of the Coral Reef, and has a sidebar labeled Fun Fact. Many of the creatures are also labeled, and the end of the book provides a glossary. Although the book covers coral reefs kind of at a superficial level, it does mention the dangers of the reef. Its lack of depth would actually be ideal for young children who have a shorter attention span. The World of Coral Reefs by Erin Spencer, illustrated by Alexandre Neonakis. Like Salas's book that I just mentioned, Spencer's book features two-page spreads with text, factual blurbs, and labeled creatures. It's a much longer book, and since it has much more details, it seems geared for older children, expanding on the concepts that were only teased about in Salas's Coral Reefs. Due to the details on each page, it may not work well for a whole group read aloud, but it would work well for independent or partner reading and exploration. It has multiple pages on the dangers to the coral reef, and the end matter features a glossary and Going Deeper section. Coral Reefs by Seymour Simon. Simon's children's books have the bonus of being illustrated with full-color photographs. The beauty of the coral reef is shown in the rich photos. Simon begins with a thorough discussion of various types of corals, along with images that show their distinct shapes and patterns. He discusses the types of coral reefs, a huge variety of the creatures living in the coral reefs, and coral bleaching, along with other dangers to the reefs of the world. This is the Reef by Miriam Moss, illustrated by Adrienne Kennaway. This attractive read-aloud repeats the phrase, "This is the place," as it visits a variety of plants and animals in the coral reef. In the end matter, the author also mentions other fish to look for in the illustrations, and instructional paragraphs about the coral also follow. Books specifically about coral. Coral Gardens by Patricia Gleichoff and Karen Stasko. The basic text in Coral Gardens details the beauty, life, formation, and benefits of coral in reefs. It gives just the right amount of information for young children without providing too much information. Various animals and their effects on coral are also discussed. One Night in the Coral Sea by Sneed B. Collard III, illustrated by Robin Brickman. Brickman's three-dimensional painted paper illustrations make this book stand out on the pile, but also Collard's detail about the mass spawning of the coral in the world fascinates the ready older reader. About 75% of this book details the reproduction of coral, with details about fertilization and larva development. The other 25% covers basics about the coral reef ecosystem. As a read-aloud, it may be difficult to keep children attending for the entire book, but the catchy illustrations may allow the reader to simplify the text and summarize for the children instead. The end matter includes a detailed glossary, an index, and suggested websites to visit for more information. Books about protecting the coral reef. Keepers of the Reef by Dr. Sharon Wismer, illustrated by Alice Wong. This is a brand new book, published in 2022. With a friendly come on in, two children swim into a coral reef scene in this gorgeous new book about the ecosystem. Emphasis is on the animals that inhabit the reef, how they work together to keep the coral healthy, and the threats to this carefully balanced habitat. Pencil and watercolor illustrations make this book a great new treasure. The Brilliant Deep, Rebuilding the World's Coral Reefs by Kate Mesner, illustrated by Matthew Forsyth. With the story frame of the spawning of a newborn coral reef, Mesner then gives a biography of Ken Neddemeyer, who began the Coral Restoration Foundation. He grew up with a deep interest in coral reefs, and when he noticed the modern issues facing the reefs, he created a way that humans can help create new reefs, beginning with artificial coral reefs. Neddemeyer grows coral in a protected location and then brings it to a struggling reef to help revive the reef. The book has great read-aloud potential, and it highlights an initiative that children and families can help with to this day. Alba and the Ocean Cleanup by Laura Hawthorne. In this fictional picture book, Alba the fish notices lots of garbage in her reef. When she's caught in a plastic bottle, a girl finds her and sets to work cleaning the oceans. Although the story itself seems highly unrealistic, the end matter adds ideas for helping the environment, and the author mentions animals that are hiding throughout the illustrations of the reef for a child to go back and discover. The Great Barrier Thief by Sue Pillins and Susie Starfish. This is a new book that will be released in February 2023. The previews I found for this book show it to be a fictionalized take on reef animals saving their reef with teamwork. Subway Story by Julia Sarcone Roach. Unlike the other books, Subway Story begins in New York City and does not, for the most part, give information and facts about the coral reef. For most of the book, we learn about the life of a subway car named Jessie, from when she was created to her job shuttling people around the city to her retirement in a junkyard. Although Jessie worries about her ultimate destiny, it ends up being on the ocean floor as a home for fish in an artificial reef, showing how humans are trying to do their part to revive the ocean. Books about animals of the coral reef. Dive in. Swim with Sea Creatures at Their Actual Size by Roxy Monroe. With the focus on the coral reef ecosystem, Monroe illustrates the variety of animals to be found there, with the main teaser being that these illustrations are actual sized, from tiny seahorses to reef sharks. With the sizes relative to each other, the book helps readers put these tiny fish, corals, and stingrays into context. The last animal featured in the reef is a human, although we only see the human's fin. Of course, the book then mentions how humans impact the reef with cautions on how they can make sure not to damage the reef. The book includes a diagram of all the reef creatures illustrated, a map of where reefs can be found in the world, an extensive list of other resources for adults and children, a glossary, and an index. On Kiki's Reef by Carol L. Malner, illustrated by Trina L. Hunter. Parallel text appears on each page. One provides details about Kiki the sea turtle's life in a serif font, and a rhyming couplet summarizes one main action on the page for the youngest readers in a sans serif font. The illustrations are detailed illustrations of all the actions happening in the larger block of text. I'd suggest reading both parts of the text for older children, as I really enjoyed the rhymes. But if you don't want to, the non-rhyming text could also suffice. If you only read the rhyming couplet for the youngest readers, you may want to point out the part of the image explaining that action that's in the rhyme. Lots of facts fill the end matter, as well as a map of the coral reefs of the world. Over in the Ocean, in the Coral Reef, by Marianne Burks, illustrated by Jeanette Cannon. This book imitates the Somewhere in the Meadow song using the Great Barrier Reef as a setting. It follows a counting pattern, it mentions a variety of animals, and it's available in both board book and regular picture book. It would be great for the very young to help count along with, and if you find a recording, the children can sing along as well. Or you could give it a try. Books about other ocean animals. Although the following books do not specifically talk about the coral reef, the animals that they're about are found in the coral reef. And so I wanted to include them here in case you wanted to do the little writing assignment for early elementary children that I have made. First we have Becoming a Jellyfish by Grace Hansen. This is an early reader text that shows the growing up of a jellyfish in just 9 pages of text with 9 beautiful illustrations. And they're photographs rather. And these are photographs of baby jellyfish. It's short and sweet. What else do you want? Jellyfish are cute. Next we have 2 books about starfish. Starfish of the Sea, A Day in the Life of a Starfish by Janet Halfman, illustrated by Joan Pally, and Starfish by Edith Thatcher Hurd, illustrated by Robin Brickman. It's a Let's Read and Find Out Stage 1 book. I love that series. I never knew all these details about starfish, and they're sure to fascinate children, especially if the children have gone to a beach and walked along the shore and seen a starfish. They will be fascinated to learn how they are different from other animals. Seahorse, the Shyest Fish in the Sea by Chris Butterworth, illustrated by John Lawrence. The front matter indicates that the illustrations are made from vinyl engravings, watercolor washes, and printed wood textures, and it is a lovely effect. In addition to an interesting present tense storyline, factual blurbs dot every page. Sponges Are Skeletons by Barbara Juster Espenson, illustrated by Holly Keller. Again, a Let's Read and Find Out book. I learned a lot from this book, and did you even know that sponges are living animals? Gentle Giant Octopus by Karen Wallace, illustrated by Mike Bostock. Even the giant octopus lives in the coral reef. These are just some great picture books about the coral reef and the animals that live there. And just for fun, I wanted to add one more in, the Ocean Craft book by Claire Beaton and Rudy Haig. This book gives you lots of craft ideas for illustrating coral reefs, well, mostly the animals in the coral reef, doing different kinds of projects that reflect the type of animal. And if you're looking for more crafts to do, this would be a fun one. All right, thanks so much. See you next time.